guys, I thought I would kind of give you guys an update on something that I am going to be starting on soon. Well, I'm in my backyard right now, and normally right now I would be planting out my garden and sowing seeds for my Back to Eden garden style gardenette. I have a plot at somebody's house, and they unfortunately decided to help me out, and they went ahead and tilled my garden. I don't know if anyone out there is familiar with the Back to Eden garden style, but it is a no-till garden style, and it utilizes covering. Specifically, I use wood chips. So they tilled all my wood chips in. Some of you might be wondering, why is that bad? Well, when you have raw organic material that's not decomposing, and you put that into the soil via tilling, it will actually eat up your available nitrogen. And unfortunately, that's not good for the plants. Many of the plants that we traditionally choose to garden with, they require high amounts of nitrogen. So effectively, I know, scientifically speaking, that my garden's not going to yield as much or as well this year as it did last year. So I'm still going to plant there, but I'm not thinking that I'm going to get a lot of what I want, or of what I want to sell even. So, as I said, I'm in my backyard, and I am now in the situation of most people in this city. If you have a yard, it's extremely small, and I'm trying to do some planning of how I want to set up my yard so that I can still have some green space, so that I can still have some vegetables to provide for my family. And, you know, since it's a small space, you know, I'm thinking about, I have some fences on my property line on both sides, and I'm thinking about utilizing those for some of my vegetables. Planning where you're going to have things in your yard is very important, and there's a lot of things you need to take into consideration. For instance, your light. When you come out this early, it's March right now, beginning of March here in Roanoke, Virginia, and right now, if I were to show you my yard, there's lots of sunlight in my yard, but when you think about it, it's because the trees haven't leafed out yet. And once those trees leaf out, you're going to be left with a much different situation as far as how much light your yard gets. And since the majority of the vegetables that I grow require high light or lots of sun, that's not going to be good for me when I'm planning to not take that into consideration. So I'm taking lighting into consideration. I'm taking the slope of my yard into consideration. Some plants require more water than others. Some are more drought tolerant. If you're not familiar with drought tolerant, it just means that the plants, they don't stress out as much if you don't have as much water on them. However, if you're doing Back to Eden gardening like I am, I never water. So for me, in my situation, it's not as much of an issue. But if you have a more traditional way of gardening, then you'll definitely want to consider which plants you put where. So another thing that you want to take into consideration is if you have any shared spaces in where you're gardening. For example, I have a fence over here, I'll show you. So there's a fence right there, and then there's also a fence on this other side, and we're going to walk up here for a second. So this fence right here is a shared fence between both properties, And so when you have a shared space like that, you want to talk to your neighbors before you do anything to the fence. For what I'm planning on using it for, I want to grow my early season vegetables on there, some of my crawlers. So you're talking about string beans, your green beans, your peas, things like that can help you utilize your space more efficiently by letting it grow up versus using a bush type bean that would take up more ground space. And since I have a small yard now to work with, space is definitely a consideration. So, as you're thinking about where you're going to put things, keep in mind that you have areas that have lots of light. You're going to have areas that have not so much light, maybe a little bit of light, a little bit of shade. And then you're going to have some areas that are in full shade. So really, the name of the game is do some planning before you plant anything in your yard, and just really figure out what each vegetable that you're trying, or plant that you're trying to grow, needs, and then put those in your yard in a way that's not only going to produce food for you, but also be aesthetically pleasing. Because let's face it, yeah, it's great to grow stuff, but you still want to have people over, and you still want to have the use of your green space, for your kids or your guests, or just so you can enjoy your backyard. So, last year I had some wood chips dumped here for free, and I can make another video about some ways that you can get some of your materials for free or for fairly cheap. But I have some wood chips here. This is my pile left over from last year. And I'm sort of in the middle. I was redoing the landscape. And so when I was redoing the landscape, I brought in, let me see if I can get some light here. I brought in my manure, I brought in my mulch, and I was putting in plants in the front, mainly working on the front part of the yard in front of the house. And I've decided that I'm going to keep the front of the house more aesthetically pleasing, unless I find out that I really want to grow some more stuff. But since I've already put the work in, I'm going to keep it there and looking nice, and I won't disturb it. But the backyard originally was going to be just for aesthetics, and so I've got my mulch here already, my wood chips, and then I'm going to look for some manure to put in. I have a source from a horse farm that I can come get the manure for free. It's aged, so I don't have to worry about that. I trust them. I've worked with them before. And I'm gonna go over with my truck, go ahead and get my manure, and I'm gonna dump it here in the side yard next to my wood chips. So once I figure out where I want everything, I'm gonna put my manure down first and kind of make the bed lines. And what I mean by that is I'm not going to do a enclosed type garden. I'm going to leave it as if it was landscaping in the backyard. So it's going to look more natural, and it's not going to take up like rectangular areas of the backyard. It's going to be more natural looking. So I'll put my manure down in those areas, and per the light around the area, draw a diagram basically of where I'm going to have everything, how many plants I need to put in there, and I'm going to go from there. So this is my first experience with a home landscape style gardening, I guess if you could say that. So this, I think a lot of homeowners are probably in the same situation in the city as I am. If you have a yard, it's small. So I'm going to keep bringing updates and putting them on here as far as what I'm doing, how it's working, And if you guys have any questions, definitely post them for me. I'd love to answer your questions or, give you any information that I can about how you can do this at your own house. And again, I'll post another video about some of my experiences with back to eating gardening. And thanks for watching, and thanks for the likes, and please subscribe.